After the divorce papers were signed, my ex-wife, Wendy, tossed a bank card on the table in front of me, her posture radiating superiority. "There's 200,000 in there. That should be enough for a man who's never worked a day in his life to get by for a while. Larry Jensen, don't say I didn't treat you right." Her old flame, Peter, wrapped a possessive arm around her, his eyes filled with a poorly hidden mix of victory and contempt. My 3-year marriage got me nothing but the clothes on my back and 200,000 in severance pay. Wendy believed she had single-handedly built Oritech, a company worth hundreds of millions, from the ground up. And me? I was just a parasite she'd cast aside on her path to success, a leech who could only cling to her for survival. She had no idea that the company she was so proud of was nothing more than a toy my mother had given her to practice with. And the company's legal owner, the name on the property deeds from start to finish, there was only ever one: Larry Jensen. The sunlight stung my eyes as I walked out of City Hall. Wendy and Peter looked like a perfect couple, arm in arm, as they slipped into the Bentley my mother had given her. The window rolled down, and Peter shot me a defiant smirk, silently mouthing 2 words: "You loser." I watched, expressionless, as they sped off, then glanced down at the bank card Wendy had shoved into my hand. $200,000. Was she treating me like a beggar? I casually tossed the card into a nearby trash can, just like I was tossing away our ridiculous marriage. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Wendy. "Out of respect for our marriage, I'm leaving you everything in the villa. Be out in 3 days. Don't make this difficult for me." I had to laugh. That waterfront mansion in the city's prime downtown location, she thought she'd bought it with her own hard work, which is why she was being so generous. She didn't know the deed to that villa had been sitting quietly in my family's safe the entire time, and the owner's name listed was mine. And the money she used to pay the mortgage every month? It went directly into my mother's private account. The official reason was to help her develop financial management skills and a sense of family responsibility. How laughable. I didn't go back to the villa. Instead, I dragged a small suitcase with me and took a cab to a 5-star hotel. After checking in, I threw myself onto the soft king-sized bed, stared at the ceiling, and let my mind go blank for a full 10 minutes. 3 years of marriage felt like some kind of absurd dream. I thought I had married for love, married a woman with limitless potential. For her, I suppressed all my rich kid tendencies. I studied recipes to cook for her, helped her manage her health, and supported her as she went from a tiny office to where she was today. My mother had warned me. She said a woman like Wendy was too ambitious, that her character was flawed, and that she wasn't the right one for me. I didn't believe her. I thought she was just from a poor background and had a little too much pride. I thought if I loved her enough, supported her enough, she would feel how genuine I was. Instead, I became a rung on her social ladder, to be used and then kicked away. The moment her old flame, Peter, returned to the country, she couldn't wait to file for divorce. Her reason was that we had nothing in common, that I couldn't keep up with her. "Larry, all you know how to do is work out, try new recipes, and manage the house. That's not what I want. Peter is different. He can help me land multi-million-dollar contracts. He's my soulmate." That's what she'd said last night during our final showdown. All I felt at that moment was disgust. The gym I work out at is part of my family's business empire. The recipes I studied, they were specifically to help her recover from the constant whining and dining her job required. The housework I managed, I did it so she could pursue her career without a single worry. And Peter, the man who could supposedly land million-dollar contracts, he was just riding the coattails of his father, a VP at some mid-level company who could pull a few strings for her. I didn't say any of this, because I knew that when a woman's heart changes, your very breathing becomes a mistake. I took a deep breath, sat up, and dialed my mom. She answered almost instantly. "Larry, is it done?" My mother's voice was as steady as ever. "Yeah, it's done." My own voice was a little hoarse. There were a few seconds of silence on the other end, followed by my mom's pained sigh. "You foolish boy, you've been through too much. Come home. Your father made your favorite sweet and sour pork ribs." At that moment, my eyes, against my will, finally turned red. The next day, I went home. Not to the modest, upper-middle-class house Wendy thought my parents lived in, but to the Jensen estate, a multi-acre property in the city's most exclusive enclave. As the car slowly drove in, the butler, already waiting in a tuxedo, respectfully opened my door. "Welcome home, young master." I nodded and walked into the main house I hadn't set foot in for 3 years. In the living room, my mother was reading the financial news on the sofa, while my father leisurely watered a potted orchid nearby. Seeing me, my dad immediately put down the watering can and rushed over to hug me, his eyes welling up. "My dear son, you're finally willing to come home." I leaned on my father's broad shoulder, greedily soaking in the familial warmth I'd missed for so long. The tension I'd held for 3 years finally melted away. "Mom, Dad, I'm back." My mom put down her newspaper and waved me over. "It's good you're back." "Come, sit." I sat down beside her. She patted the back of my hand, her eyes full of sympathy and a hint of "I told you so" resignation. "That Wendy girl, she didn't bully you, did she?" I shook my head. "She doesn't have what it takes." "Good." My mom nodded, pulled a thick file from under the coffee table, and pushed it toward me. "Take a look. This will be your work for the foreseeable future." I paused for a second, then took it and opened it. The first page bore a few gold-embossed words. "Proposal for the recovery of Oritech equity and assets." My pupils contracted. I looked up at my mom. She took a sip of tea and spoke slowly. 3 years ago, you said you saw potential in Wendy and insisted on marrying her. I couldn't stop you, so all I could do was create a safety net for you. This company, Oritech, from its initial registration capital to the subsequent funding rounds, was all anonymously injected by me through offshore corporations. The legal representative is you. 100% of the equity is in your name. Wendy, from the very beginning, was nothing more than a professional manager I hired. I just gave her the fancy title of founder CEO and let her play out a fantasy of starting from scratch. I had her sign a performance agreement back then. If she could grow the company's market value to $1 billion within 3 years and remain faithful to you, then I would gift her 51% of the company for real. Unfortunately, my mom sneered. She was too impatient. The moment the company showed a glimmer of success, she couldn't wait to bare her fangs. She failed this test spectacularly. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand, aching and full. So what I thought was a journey of shared struggle was, in her eyes, just a golden ticket to the upper class. And I, just like this company, was merely a stepping stone for her. "Mom, thank you," I choked out. "Silly boy, you don't need to thank your mother," my mom sighed. "Now, it's time for the company to return to its rightful owner. What do you want to do next?" I looked at the words Oritech on the file, and the smug faces of Wendy and Peter flashed in my mind. A cold glint appeared in my eyes, and a slow smile spread across my lips. "Mom, I think I want to be the one to personally drag her down from that throne." My mom nodded in approval. "Good. That's my son. Go ahead. The entire Jensen Group is behind you." For the next month, I completely vanished from my old life. I turned down all unnecessary social events and threw myself into my work and studies. My mom hired the best tutors for me, covering everything from finance and law to corporate management. My days were packed. All the skills I had set aside for Wendy's sake, I picked them back up one by one. I replaced the comfortable, casual clothes in my closet with sharp, high-end custom suits. Every morning, I trained with a personal coach, then buried myself in my study, handling business for some of the Jensen Group subsidiaries to get familiar with the workflow. My mom gave me one of the group's subsidiaries to manage as practice, forcing me to grow up as quickly as possible. The man in the mirror looked more determined each day, his presence growing stronger. The domestic husband who revolved around the kitchen and his wife was dead. Standing here now was the sole heir of the Jensen Group, Larry Jensen. My assistant, Aria, was handpicked by my mother. She was exceptionally capable and fiercely loyal. Every day, she reported to me on the latest movements of Wendy and Oritech. "Sir, Wendy has been making big moves lately. She's preparing for the company's Series C funding round and plans to initiate an IPO by the end of the year." She also publicly announced that Peter will join the company as brand director, under the title of founder's husband. Oh, founder's husband? I chuckled mockingly. She certainly knows how to flatter herself. Yes, sir. The whole industry is buzzing, saying Ms. Wendy and Mr. Peter are a match made in heaven. A true power couple, Arya said, her tone tinged with indignation. I picked up my coffee and blew on it gently. Let her enjoy it. The higher you climb, the harder you fall. Sir, when do we make our move?
No rush.
I set down my cup, my eyes shining with strategic certainty. We'll wait until she has the Series C money in her hands, until her dream of going public is at its sweetest. Then we will personally shatter it all. I wanted Wendy to experience the feeling of falling from the clouds into the depths of hell at the peak of her success. I wanted her to know that everything she ever had was a gift from me. And what I can give, I can certainly take away. As the days passed, Wendy and Peter became increasingly high profile. They gave exclusive interviews to several business magazines, talking at length about Wendy's rags to riches story and their fairy tale romance. In the photos, Wendy looked triumphant, with a handsome Peter standing by her side, a massive diamond ring glittering on his finger. The headlines were even more jarring. From nothing to a billion-dollar fortune in just 3 years and marrying for love. The business queen and her elite partner. Reading these articles, I just felt the biting irony. My ex-wife was using my family's money and my family's company to prop up her new lover. And I, the actual owner, had been cast in her narrative as the short-sighted, incompatible husband she'd left behind. Arya placed a file in front of me. Sir, here is the list of investors for Oritech's Series C funding round. I took it and saw that the lead investor was a well-known venture capital firm, with several other reputable companies also contributing. The total funding amount is $500 million. Arya added. I nodded. Wendy's ability to sell a dream is as impressive as ever. Sir, she's already started preparing for the IPO roadshow. The propaganda is everywhere, calling Oritech the biggest dark horse in the tech sector this year. Dark horse? I sneered. More like a dead horse. I closed the file and gave Arya my instructions. Go and set up a meeting for me with the heads of these investment firms. Tell them Larry Jensen of the Jensen Group would like to invite them for tea. Arya's eyes lit up. Understood. Wendy, you think you've got your ticket to the stock market? You're wrong. That's a one-way ticket to hell. A week later, in the city's most exclusive private club, I met with the heads of the investment firms. They were mostly sharp, capable women who looked a bit surprised to see me. They couldn't understand why the heir to the Jensen Group would suddenly request a meeting with them. After all, in their eyes, the Jensen Group was a traditional industrial giant, seemingly worlds away from a trendy internet startup like Oritech. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I got straight to the point. Ladies, thank you for coming on such short notice. I wanted to talk about your investment in Oritech. Ms. Wallace, the head of the lead VC firm, smiled. Mr. Jensen, you're interested in Oritech too? It seems Ms. Wendy is truly a force to be reckoned with, even getting the attention of the Jensen Group. I raised my teacup, took a small sip and said calmly, you misunderstand, Ms. Wallace. I'm not interested in Oritech. I'm here to warn you that your investment is about to go up in smoke. As soon as I said it, the atmosphere in the room froze. Ms. Wallace's face hardened. Mr. Jensen, what are you implying? I said nothing, simply nodding to the lawyer behind me. The lawyer stepped forward and handed a stack of prepared documents to each of the executives. Please take a look. This is Oritech's business registration, proof of its equity structure, and documentation of asset ownership. The women began flipping through the files with skepticism, but when they saw the name Larry Jensen clearly printed as the legal representative and sole shareholder, their expressions became a spectacular mix of shock, disbelief, and horror. Ms. Wallace shot to her feet, pointing at the documents with a trembling hand. This is impossible. Wendy swore she was the founder and majority shareholder. My lawyer adjusted his glasses and explained coolly, Ms. Wendy is merely a professional manager hired by my client, Mr. Larry Jensen. She holds no shares in the company. Everything she has claimed publicly constitutes commercial fraud. We have reason to believe she is using a false identity and fraudulent information to raise funds illegally. According to the agreement, my client has the right to terminate her employment at any time and reclaim full control of the company. The room was dead silent. The investment leaders, who had been chatting cheerfully just moments before, were now pale and sweating. $500 million. If that money vanished, they would have a lot of explaining to do to their boards. Mr. Jensen, Ms. Wallace's voice was now pleading. We misjudged the situation. Is there any way to salvage this? I put down my teacup and finally smiled for the first time that day. Of course, there's a way. I looked at them and said, word by word, I am announcing that the Jensen Group will officially acquire Oritech and restructure it. Your investments can be converted at equal value into shares of one of our subsidiaries. Of course, if you don't trust me, you can choose to pull your funding now. However, my tone shifted, my gaze sharpening. If you withdraw your funds, Wendy's capital chain will break. The company will be liquidated, and I can't guarantee how much you'll get back. It was a choice. Trust me and climb aboard the much larger, more stable ship of the Jensen Group, or risk a mutually destructive outcome where they might lose everything. They were smart women. They knew what to choose. Ms. Wallace was the first to speak, practically shouting, "We'll do it. We'll convert to Jensen shares. Mr. Jensen, we look forward to working with you." The others quickly chimed in. Yes, we trust Mr. Jensen. It's an honor to partner with the Jensen Group. Looking at their fawning smiles, I felt nothing. I stood up and looked down at them. Excellent. Pleasure doing business with you. Also, I expect this matter to remain confidential until everything is settled. Of course. Ms. Wallace nodded frantically. Satisfied, I turned and left. Wendy, your funding, your allies, they're all mine now. Next up, your company. Wendy was on top of the world. The Series C funding had come through smoothly, the IPO was on track, and Peter was utterly devoted to her. She felt like she had it all, a booming career and a perfect romance. She was convinced she was a winner on the verge of reaching the pinnacle of her life. One day, she was in her office being lovey-dovey with Peter, fantasizing about the glorious moment they would ring the opening bell after the company went public. Darling, once the company is listed, I'll buy you a yacht and we'll sail around the world, Wendy said, beaming as she hugged Peter. Peter nestled against her, his voice full of adoration. Wendy, you're amazing. Not like that loser Larry. He had no romantic spark and was completely useless to you. At the mention of my name, a flicker of disdain crossed Wendy's face. Don't talk about him, he's such a buzzkill. A man who lives off a woman has no place in this world. He's probably crying in some corner right now. Just then, her executive assistant knocked and entered, looking panicked. Ms. Wendy, bad news. Annoyed at the interruption, Wendy snapped, "What's with the panic? Get a hold of yourself. What is it?" Ms. Wendy, our corporate accounts have been frozen. What? Wendy shot up from her chair, her face paling. What do you mean? Why would they be frozen out of the blue? The assistant was on the verge of tears. I don't know. Finance went to the bank to withdraw funds to pay our suppliers, and the bank said our accounts are under investigation for illegal fundraising and have been frozen by the authorities. Bullshit, Wendy roared. Our funding rounds were all legitimate. How could it be illegal fundraising? Investigate. Find out what's going on right now. But before she could get any answers, more bad news flooded in. Ms. Wendy, our core tech team just submitted their resignations. All at once. Ms. Wendy, several of our biggest clients just unilaterally terminated their contracts. Ms. Wendy, Ms. Wallace and the other investors are demanding an emergency shareholder meeting, or they'll pull their funding together. Wendy was completely stunned. She felt like a speeding ocean liner that had suddenly been hit by icebergs from all sides. The entire company descended into chaos. Peter started to panic too, grabbing Wendy's arm. Wendy, what the hell is happening? Is someone trying to sabotage us? Wendy's face was ashen. She couldn't figure out where things had gone wrong. She considered herself shrewd, if not entirely ethical, in her journey to the top, and she thought she had covered all her bases. How could everything collapse so suddenly? She frantically made calls, but her once friendly partners either didn't pick up or stammered excuses. A huge sense of dread washed over her. She had the sinking feeling that an invisible net was closing in around her. The emergency shareholder meeting was held as scheduled. The atmosphere in the conference room was so thick with tension you could cut it with a knife. Wendy sat at the head of the table, her face haggard, with dark circles under her eyes. She had spent all night trying to figure out what went wrong and had come up with nothing. Ms. Wallace and the other investors looked at her with undisguised hostility, as if they were looking at a dead woman walking. "Ms. Wendy, I believe you owe us an explanation," Ms. Wallace began. "Why were the company's accounts frozen? Why did the core team resign en masse?" Wendy forced herself to answer. "Ms. Wallace, everyone, these are just temporary technical issues, likely caused by malicious rumors from our competitors. Please trust me, I will have this resolved very soon." "Resolved? How?" Another investor sneered. "We didn't put in $500 million for you to throw it away. Wendy, I suggest you come clean. Is there something you've been hiding from us?" Wendy was sweating under the pressure, able to do little more than repeat empty phrases like "trust me" and "give me some time." Peter sat beside her, looking just as nervous. He had never seen her so cornered. Just as the arguments reached a fever pitch, the doors to the conference room were slowly pushed open. Everyone's attention was drawn to the entrance. Dressed in a tailored dark suit and shining leather shoes, flanked by a team of lawyers, I walked in slowly. My face was sharp, my eyes cold, and my powerful presence immediately silenced the room. Everyone stared, stunned. When Wendy saw me, she looked as if she'd seen a ghost, her eyes wide with shock. Larry Jensen? What are you doing here?" Her voice was filled with disbelief. The man she remembered was the one who always wore casual clothes, who was gentle and completely subservient to her. The man standing before her now was a stranger who terrified her. I ignored her question and walked directly to the head of the table. Wendy instinctively started to stand up to yell at me, but a single, icy glare from me pinned her to her seat. I scanned the faces in the room, then fixed my gaze on Wendy's terrified expression. My lips parted, and I spoke, each word deliberate and clear. "Allow me to introduce myself. I am the sole legal representative and the 100% controlling shareholder of Oritech. My name is Larry Jensen." My words hit the room like a bombshell. A dead silence fell over the conference table. Everyone looked at me as if I were a madman. Wendy was the first to react. She let out a wild laugh, as if she'd just heard the funniest joke in the world. "Larry, are you insane? Did the divorce mess you up that badly? You a shareholder? Don't you know your place?" Peter, beside her, snapped out of his stupor and added shrilly, "Exactly. Larry, you're just a freeloader," Wendy kicked out. "What right do you have to spew nonsense here? Security, get this lunatic out of here." He tried to push me, but my bodyguards effortlessly blocked him. I didn't even bother to look at him. My cold gaze remained fixed on Wendy, as if watching a clown. "Wendy, it seems 3 years of a comfortable life have made you forget where you came from." My legal team stepped forward at the perfect moment, projecting a series of documents onto the large screen in the conference room. "Ladies and gentlemen, please observe. This is the business registration for Oritech. Legal representative, Larry Jensen. This is the company's equity structure. Sole shareholder, Larry Jensen, 100% ownership. These are the property deeds for all real estate owned by the company, including the very building we are in now. Owner, Larry Jensen. And the professional manager employment contract and non-disclosure agreement signed 3 years ago between Ms. Wendy and my client." Each document was like a resounding slap across Wendy and Peter's faces. On the screen, the black and white text and red official seals were too glaring to ignore. Wendy's smile froze, then crumbled, her face turning a ghastly white. She stared at the screen, her body trembling, muttering to herself, "No, impossible. This has to be impossible. It's all fake. You forged it." She lunged at the screen as if to tear it down but was firmly restrained by the bodyguards. "Forged?" My lawyer calmly adjusted his glasses. "Ms. Wendy, Every one of these documents is filed with the Bureau of Commerce and relevant authorities and can be verified at any time. If you dispute their authenticity, we would be more than happy to present the originals to a judge in court. As for you, I finally turned my attention to the now ashen Peter. Sir, on what authority are you shouting in this room? Your name does not appear on the company's employee roster. You are currently trespassing in a private shareholder meeting and disrupting the proceedings. Security. Before I could finish, 2 large security guards entered and flanked Peter. Please escort this gentleman out. No. Wendy. Save me. Wendy. Peter shrieked in terror, struggling wildly. But Wendy was in no position to save anyone. She stood frozen like a statue, her mind a complete blank. Only after Peter was dragged from the room did she snap back to reality, staring at me with a look of horror, hatred, and utter strangeness. Larry Jensen, it was you, this was all your plan? I pulled out the chair she had just been sitting in, sat down gracefully, crossed my legs, and looked at her with detached amusement. A plan? Wendy, you give yourself too much credit. I'm simply taking back what's mine. My eyes swept over the other investors in the room. They were now sitting as still as schoolchildren, barely daring to breathe. As for you, Ms. Wendy, I shifted my gaze back to her. As the former CEO of Oritech, you have seriously violated your employment contract. First, you fabricated a founder identity and engaged in fraudulent marketing, severely damaging the company's reputation. Second, without the approval of the board of directors, which is to say, me, you misappropriated company funds to purchase luxury cars, watches, and other goods for yourself and your lover, which constitutes embezzlement. Third, you attempted to take a company that does not belong to you public through illegal means, which constitutes commercial fraud. With every point I made, Wendy's face grew paler. By the time I finished, she was swaying on her feet, looking as if she might faint at any moment. My legal team has already gathered all the evidence. I looked at her, my voice devoid of any warmth. I am now officially informing you that you were terminated. Out of respect for our former marriage, I felt disgusted just saying the words. I'll give you 2 choices. 1. Disappear from my sight, immediately. I can overlook the company assets you've misappropriated. Consider it your salary for the past 3 years. 2. We see each other in court. In that case, you'll not only have to spit out everything you took with interest, but you'll also be facing prison time. Which will it be? Wendy's body went limp, and she collapsed to the floor. Everything she had been so proud of, her career, her wealth, her entire foundation in this city, had crumbled to dust in a matter of minutes. It turned out she was never some self-made business genius. She was just a pet in a golden cage, a tool my mother used to test her character. And she had failed in the most spectacular way possible. Overwhelming humiliation and despair completely consumed her. She looked up at me, her eyes bloodshot, and asked in a hoarse voice, "Why, Larry? Why would you do this to me? What did I ever do to you?" Hearing that, I laughed, a laugh that shook my entire chest. Do to me? I stood up, walked over to her, and looked down at her from above. Wendy, you used my family's money, lived in my family's house, and ran my family's company, and then you had the audacity to tell me that I wasn't good enough for you, that I couldn't keep up? You took my money to support your old flame, made him a so-called brand director, and let him walk all over me while you flaunted your superior love? You painted me to the media as a short-sighted freeloader to build up your own image as a heroic, self-made woman? And now you ask me what you did to me? My voice grew colder with every word, each one a knife twisting in her heart. Wendy, your biggest mistake wasn't falling out of love with me. It was being greedy and stupid. You enjoyed everything I provided for you, yet you delusionally thought you could get rid of me and claim it all for yourself. Life doesn't work that way. I stopped looking at her and turned to the guards. Please escort her out as well. From this day forward, this person, along with the aforementioned Mr. Peter, are permanently banned from this building. Yes, Mr. Jensen. The guards lifted the catatonic Wendy and dragged her out like a sack of garbage. From beginning to end, she didn't resist again, only staring at me with a hollow, desperate gaze. After Wendy was gone, the atmosphere in the conference room grew even more oppressive. Ms. Wallace and the others sat perfectly still, breathing cautiously. They now understood just how foolish they had been. They thought they were investing in a rising star, but it turned out she was just a high-level employee. The real boss was sitting right in front of them. "Ladies," I said, returning to my seat, my voice calm again. "My apologies for the drama." "Mr. Jensen, please, not at all," Ms. Wallace quickly said with a sycophantic smile. "We were the ones who were blind. We were almost tricked by that woman. Thanks to your timely intervention, you saved us from a huge mistake." Yes, Mr. Jensen is so young and brilliant with such sharp judgment." The others chimed in. I waved a hand, cutting off their flattery. "Let's dispense with the pleasantries and get down to business. As of today, Oritech will be officially renamed Oritech and integrated into the Jensen Group's strategic portfolio. I will be redirecting the company's development. As for your investments, I looked at them, our previous agreement stands. You can convert them into shares of a Jensen subsidiary and enjoy the profits of the entire group, or you can choose to remain with Oritech and become the first shareholders of the new company. I guarantee you that under my leadership, the future of Oritech will be far bigger and better than any dream Wendy ever sold you." My words were firm, filled with unshakable confidence. This wasn't arrogance, it was a fact backed by the immense resources of the Jensen Group. Whatever Wendy could achieve on her own, I could do 10 times better with the full force of my family's empire behind me. Ms. Wallace and the others exchanged glances and immediately made their decision. "We want to stay with the new company. We believe in your leadership, Mr. Jensen." It was a no-brainer. Now that they were tied to the Jensen Group, who in their right mind would jump ship? Excellent. I nodded, satisfied. In that case, welcome to Oritech. A crisis that could have torn the company apart was resolved with ease. In fact, I had used it to solidify my absolute control and restructure the entire enterprise. After the meeting, Ms. Wallace stayed behind and respectfully handed me her card. "Mr. Jensen, this is my personal number. If you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to call. Anything I can do, I will." I took the card with a faint smile. "Thank you, Ms. Wallace. We're all in the same boat now." After everyone had left, I stood alone before the massive floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the city below. From this day forward, this was my battlefield. The Larry Jensen who was kicked out of his home with nowhere to go was gone for good. In his place stood the chairman of Oritech, Larry Jensen. Wendy's downfall was a storm that swept through the entire business community. One day she was the business queen lauded by the media, the next, she was a reviled con artist and gold digger. Her current humiliation was as intense as her former glory. All sorts of stories began to surface. Someone dug up stories from her college days about how she used to pretend to be rich to scam boys out of their money and affection. Someone else revealed that in her early startup days, she had gotten on her knees to beg a client for a project. And then someone photographed Peter dumping her the moment he found out she was penniless, immediately moving on to another wealthy heiress and disappearing without a trace. When you're down, everyone kicks you. The same media outlets that had built her up were now the ones tearing her down most viciously. Ugly headlines filled the internet. The Great Swindle, billion-dollar CEO was just a glorified manager. A gold digger's downfall. From the pinnacle to penniless in a single day. Old flame burns out. Lovers flee when disaster strikes. I had Arya compile these reports for me to read over lunch every day. They were excellent for my appetite. Meanwhile, I moved with lightning speed to overhaul the company. First was a personnel shake-up. All of Wendy's cronies, the mediocre, ass-kissing relatives she'd installed, were fired. I didn't keep a single one. The few brilliant core technicians she had sidelined, I personally met with them and hired them back with triple their old salaries and stock options. A new management team was quickly put in place. The company was completely revitalized. Efficiency and morale soared. Second was a business restructuring. I scrapped Wendy's grandiose and impractical IPO plan, refocusing the company's strategy on technological R&D and product innovation. Using the Jensen Group's channels and resources, we quickly landed several major projects we couldn't have dreamed of before. The company's financial situation improved rapidly, becoming even healthier than when we had the $500 million in funding. Seeing their new boss was so decisive and capable, the employees were fully on board, and their enthusiasm for their work was at an all-time high. In just 1 month, Oritech had completely erased all traces of Wendy and was on a trajectory of rapid growth. One afternoon, I was in my office reviewing a project proposal. The front desk called, her voice hesitant. "Mr. Jensen, there's a Ms. Wendy downstairs who insists on seeing you. She says if you don't see her, she'll kneel at the entrance until you do." The hand holding my pen froze. Wendy? She still had the nerve to show her face? I rubbed my temples, feeling a wave of annoyance. Have security deal with her. If she comes back, call the police. But, Mr. Jensen, there are a lot of reporters gathering downstairs. The receptionist's voice got even quieter. I frowned. Was this Wendy's new game? Emotional blackmail through the media? Did she really think kneeling downstairs would win her sympathy and embarrass me? How naive. I put down my pen, stood up, and walked to the window. From my vantage point, I had a clear view of the scene at the building's main entrance. Wendy was wearing cheap clothes, her hair was a mess, and her face was sallow. She had lost a ton of weight and looked completely haggard. She was kneeling ramrod straight on the steps, a cardboard sign in front of her with large, crooked words scrawled in red marker. "Larry, I was wrong. Please forgive me." She was surrounded by a sea of cameras and flashing lights. Reporters swarmed her like sharks that had scented blood. "Ms. Wendy, in what capacity are you kneeling to apologize to your ex-husband? Didn't you previously state that you were the one who initiated the divorce? Do you have any comment on the rumors that you're a gold digger?" Wendy ignored their sharp questions, staring blankly at the company entrance, muttering over and over, "Larry, I know I was wrong. Please just come out and see me. I'm begging you." She looked as pitiful as could be. An uninformed observer might have actually believed she was a devoted woman pushed to the brink by a cruel ex-husband. Unfortunately for her, no one there was a fool. I let out a cold laugh, picked up the intercom, and buzzed the security department. "Get that public nuisance downstairs out of here. If she refuses to leave, break her legs. I'll cover the medical bills." My voice was as cold and emotionless as ice. After hanging up, I ignored the circus downstairs, returned to my desk, and went back to work. "Wendy, did you really think this pathetic act would make me go soft? You were wrong. My heart died the day you threw me away for Peter without a second thought. Now I have no pity left for you. Not a single drop." The drama downstairs ended quickly. Several large, intimidating security guards unceremoniously hauled Wendy up from the ground and tossed her across the street like a bag of trash. When the reporters tried to follow, they were firmly blocked by the guards. A carefully orchestrated pity party ended in an unceremonious flop. News of the incident appeared online almost immediately, but public opinion did not swing in her favor, as she had hoped. Instead, it was a landslide of ridicule. LMAO, who's she trying to fool? Should have thought of this before. Does this gold digger think we're all idiots? So arrogant when she was living off him, now she comes crawling back playing the victim? Go Larry. You can't go soft on a woman like that. Break her legs. Damn, what a boss. I'm a fan. Arya read the comments to me from her tablet, grinning from ear to ear. "Sir, that was a brilliant move. The internet's calling you the ultimate comeback king. The hero who finally woke up." I remained impassive. "Get the PR department in here. Have them issue an official statement." "A statement?" Arya blinked. Yes, I nodded. "The statement will say that our company reserves the right to pursue legal action against any individual who attempts to disrupt our normal business operations or damage the reputation of the company or myself through improper means. Also, make a $1 million donation to the city's Women and Children's Protection Foundation in my name." Arya's eyes lit up instantly. "Understood. I'll get right on it." She knew exactly what I was doing. The first part was a warning to Wendy. Don't mess with me again, or you'll face the consequences. The second part was a public declaration of my stance. I would rather give my money to charity than give a single cent to a toxic woman like you. It was the ultimate psychological blow. I thought that, after being humiliated by me time and time again, Wendy would finally give up and get out of my life. But I had underestimated her shamelessness. A week later, I finished a long meeting late at night and was heading home, exhausted. As soon as I got out of the car, a dark figure darted out from the bushes by my villa's gate and fell to its knees right in front of my vehicle. If the driver hadn't slammed on the brakes, we would have run her over. I looked closer. It was Wendy again. She looked even more wretched than last time, reeking of sour sweat like a homeless person. Larry. She saw me like a drowning person spotting a lifeline, scrambling toward my car window, tears and snot streaming down her face. Larry, I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. It was all Peter. That bastard seduced me. I was blinded, he tricked me. The person I've always loved is you. As she spoke, she started slapping herself hard across the face, the sound echoing in the quiet night. Larry, just give me one more chance, please? Let's get back together. I swear, I'll devote my whole life to you. I'll never let you down again. I'll do anything you want. I don't have to be a CEO. I'll be your servant. Just let me come back to you. Looking at her ugly, contorted face and listening to her twisted lies, I felt a wave of nausea. I didn't even bother rolling down the window. I just told the driver, drive. The driver hesitated. Mr. Jensen, but I said, drive. My voice was glacial. The driver didn't dare disobey. He stepped on the gas. Wendy, not expecting me to be so ruthless, shrieked and scrambled out of the way just in time. The car sped past her without slowing down. In the rearview mirror, I saw her collapsed on the ground, her face a mask of despair and disbelief. When I got home, my dad was waiting for me in the living room. Seeing my grim expression, he asked with concern, "What's wrong, Larry? Trouble at work?" I shook my head and briefly told him what had just happened. My dad's face turned livid with anger. "That monster. She just won't quit. Call the police." "Larry, we're calling the police right now and filing a harassment complaint." My mom came out of her study, her expression dark. "It seems we've been too merciful with her," she said coldly. "Someone like that won't learn their lesson until they experience true pain." She walked over to me and put a hand on my shoulder. "Larry, leave this to me. You focus on your work. I promise you, she will never appear before you again." Seeing the cold fury in my mother's eyes, I knew Wendy's time was up. From that day on, Wendy truly vanished, as if she had been erased from the face of the earth. I later heard bits and pieces from Arya. Apparently, my mother had pulled some strings and dug up every dirty secret from Wendy's past. Her cons in college, the trade secrets she stole when she was starting out, and all the shady accounting she did while running Oritech. The evidence was ironclad, and every single charge was enough to ruin her. The people she had crossed in the past saw that she was down and came out of the woodwork to kick her while she was vulnerable. She was quickly buried in lawsuits. To pay off various damages and fines, she sold everything she owned and still ended up with a mountain of insurmountable debt. She tried to find a job, but her reputation was so toxic that no company would touch her. She tried to go back to her hometown, but the same poor relatives she once looked down on threw her out. She went from a glamorous city elite to a penniless outcast, a rat everyone wanted to stomp on. I heard that she eventually had a mental breakdown under the pressure and was committed to a psychiatric hospital. Others said she got in deep with loan sharks, who disfigured her when she couldn't pay, and that she was now living in some filthy basement, barely surviving. The rumors were endless. But whatever her fate, it had nothing to do with me anymore. That person, along with that sordid chapter of my life, had been completely purged from my existence. And my life was just beginning. 1 year later, Oritech made a breakthrough in the field of artificial intelligence, and its valuation skyrocketed tenfold, making it one of the hottest unicorn companies in the country's tech industry. As the chairman of the company, I became a regular on the covers of major business magazines. They called me the youngest king of the business world and the most powerful man in tech. The same industry titans I once had to look up to now approached me at summits and galas, respectfully addressing me as Mr. Jensen. My career was at its zenith. One evening, I was representing the company at a major charity gala. The event was star-studded, filled with the city's elite. Dressed in a custom black tuxedo, with my mother on my arm, I was the center of attention the moment I walked in. Countless people came up to greet me, exchange business cards, and offer fawning compliments. I handled it all with practiced ease, a polite but distant smile on my face. Just as I was growing tired of the schmoozing and about to head to a quiet corner for a break, a familiar yet alien figure caught my eye. In a far corner, a woman dressed as a waitress was bent over, struggling to clean a wine spill on the floor. Her movements were clumsy, and she accidentally knocked over a nearby tray, earning a sharp scolding from her supervisor. She bowed her head repeatedly, apologizing, as humble as a speck of dust. Even though she was skeletal, her back stooped, and her face weathered by hardship, I recognized her at once. It was Wendy. I never expected to see her again here like this. She seemed to sense my gaze and looked up instinctively. The moment our eyes met, her body froze. Shock, shame, regret, fear. A storm of emotions swirled in her eyes, too complex to decipher. She tried to hide, but in her panic, she slipped and fell to the floor in a pathetic heap. A few people around her laughed. I watched her silently, feeling nothing. No hatred, no pity. It was like looking at a complete stranger. I turned to walk away, but she scrambled up from the floor as if possessed, rushing toward me, trying to grab my pant leg. Larry, her voice was as raspy as sandpaper. My bodyguards reacted instantly, intercepting her and pinning her to the ground. "Let me go. Let me talk to him. Just one word," she shrieked, struggling hysterically. The commotion quickly attracted the attention of the event's host, Ms. Davenport, a well-known real estate tycoon. She rushed over, apologizing profusely. "Mr. Jensen, I am so sorry. Our security was not up to par. I apologize for the disturbance." She then barked at the guards, "What are you waiting for? Throw this crazy woman out." "Wait," I said suddenly. Everyone froze, looking at me in confusion. I walked slowly over to where Wendy was being held down. I looked down at her face, a canvas of humiliation and despair. "What did you want to say to me?"
My voice was as calm as still water.
She looked up, and her cloudy eyes filled with tears. "Larry, I was wrong." Those words again. I watched her, my expression unchanging. "I really know I was wrong. I shouldn't have let greed blind me. I shouldn't have betrayed you," she sobbed. "This past year has been a living hell. I've looked for so many jobs, but no one will hire me once they hear my name. My parents kicked me out because I'm a disgrace. That bastard Peter is long gone. I have nothing left. I regret it every single day. I regret not cherishing you. Larry, for the sake of the love we once shared, please give me another chance. No, I don't want a chance. Just give me a way to live, please." She groveled at my feet like a dog, begging. "I can't live like this anymore. Give me any kind of job, cleaning toilets, being a doorman, anything, as long as I can eat." The people around us were watching the spectacle with amusement. I listened quietly until she finished, then slowly crouched down to meet her gaze. I looked into her eyes and said, each word clear and precise, "Wendy, have you ever once thought about how I felt a year ago, when you kicked me out with nothing?" Her body trembled violently. "Have you ever thought about how I felt when you and Peter were parading your love in front of the media, using me as your stepping stone?" Her lips quivered, but no words came out. "You don't regret what you did. You're not sorry because you still love me, or because you've truly seen the error of your ways." I gave a small, humorless smile. "You're just sorry you lost the cash cow that let you have everything without lifting a finger. Your so-called remorse, your begging, it's only happening because your life sucks now. If you were still the celebrated CEO Wendy today, would you even remember who Larry Jensen is?" Every question I asked was a scalpel, peeling back her facade and exposing the ugly, raw truth of her heart for all to see. Her face turned to ash. She was speechless, because every single word I said was true. I stood up, resuming my position of power. "Wendy, you chose this path. The day you threw me away without hesitation, you should have known this day would come. As for giving you a way to live," I looked at her, a cruel smile touching my lips. "Why should I? Everything you're suffering now, you brought upon yourself. This is your karma. With that, I didn't give her another glance. I turned and walked toward my mother. Mom, let's go. The air in here has gotten stale. My mother put a comforting arm around my shoulder and nodded. Yes, let's go home. My bodyguards released Wendy and followed us. Behind me, I could hear Wendy's desperate, animalistic howl. But I didn't look back. Not even once. Some wounds, once they scar over, no longer hurt. Some people, once you lose them, are gone for a lifetime. Wendy, from now on, you and I are worlds apart. We will never meet again. The ride home was quiet. My mother held my hand the entire time, giving me silent strength. Larry, seeing her like that, does it still hurt? She asked gently. I leaned back against the seat, watching the city lights blur past the window, and shook my head softly. Not anymore, Mom. Maybe it would have before, but not now. To me, she's like an old, ill-fitting coat. I might have felt a twinge of regret when I threw it out, but afterward, all I felt was relief. My mom smiled, relieved. I'm so glad you feel that way. She paused, then added, I only gave her a small push to start her downfall. The reason she ended up where she is today is because of her own character. If a person's roots are rotten, you can give them all the nutrients in the world, but they'll never grow into a great tree. I nodded, understanding. Mom, thank you. Thank you for always having my back, for protecting me. Silly boy. My mom stroked my hair, just like she did when I was a child. You're my only son. If I don't protect you, who will? The car pulled into the Jensen estate. Looking at the familiar, brightly lit home before me, my heart was filled with warmth and peace. That's right, what did I have to be sad about? I lost a toxic woman, but I have the best family in the world, a career I love, and the power to control my own destiny. I should be grateful. Grateful that I escaped that nightmare when I did. Grateful that after falling, I could get back up and stand taller and stronger than ever before. The next day, I arrived at the office at my usual time. Sunlight streamed through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, warming my skin. Arya knocked and came in, handing me a new project proposal. Mr. Jensen, the team pulled several all-nighters on this. It's the development plan for our next generation chip. Please take a look. I took it and began reading it carefully. Outside the window, the bustling city thrived, a ceaseless flow of traffic and life. I knew that my own story had just turned to a new chapter. As for Wendy, she was just a stumbling block on my path. I tripped on her once, and it hurt badly. But I got up, stepped over her, and left her far, far behind. The road ahead is long. I will go further and see more beautiful sights, and she will be left to rot in the mud of her past, never to make a ripple again. I closed the file, looked up, and gave Arya a confident smile. This proposal is approved. Tell the team that Oritech's next target is the stars.